Hi everyone, this is Renee Romeo of reneeromeo.com. Today's project is learning how to prevent rot and decay on a deck. Now, this decking surface is not new, but you can use this process on a new deck or an existing deck if you discover areas that moisture is getting through and you want to prevent the moisture from getting through any longer. So our main beams are made of structural composite lumber, and what that means is it's not just directly cut off of a tree, it's actually manufactured in a factory so that they can make giant long lengths and really wide widths. They can curve it, they can make it super straight. That's the reason why you use beams like this in these kinds of applications. Now, my beam is called a glue lam beam. So this is glue that's laminating wood together under pressure and making really long lengths. So what's happening here is that moisture actually got in between all those layers of wood and is actually dripping through down to the surface below. And here's the underneath side of that glue lam beam, and you can see exactly where the water's been penetrating through and dripping down onto the porch below. And what they actually tried to do was make a barrier here between the actual decking material and the beam to try to prevent some of that water getting through, but they didn't do the job right. So I'm going to show you these new products that they have out that are just amazing for this kind of work that prevents rot and decay really easily, really quickly, and pretty inexpensively. So whether you're choosing wood for a brand new deck or you're working on a deck that has some issues like mine, you're going to make sure that no matter what wood you're putting in here, it's going to be treated for the outdoors. So pressure treated wood is really kind of cool because the pressure treated wood is put into a cylinder and it's actually filled with chemicals. Then they vacuum out all the air and they pressurize it to make sure that all the chemicals that prevent disease and rot and fungus are actually going to be penetrating that wood all the way through to the center. Now, what does that mean? It means that the decking material is going to last at least 35 years, if not longer, if you actually build your deck properly. So what I have in my hand here is some metal flashing. Now, this metal flashing is really a great material to use outdoors. This is what they use to redirect water from areas where they don't want it to areas where you might not mind so much. So what they did here was they laid it directly on top of this support beam in between the decking and the support beam. And that was really meant to redirect water away from the beam so that it wouldn't penetrate. But you can kind of see here there are holes and rust everywhere. Even though they use the proper decking screws made for outdoors, these screws are all rusted and rotted out, and they've created holes throughout this entire piece of flashing. So really where they went wrong was that when they put this down, they should have put down some type of silicone. So silicone, 100% silicone, this stuff lasts for 50 years. And you can just, put it down on each and every one of the joists and all the way down the beam just to make sure that you have a really nice barrier for water, and that when it sandwiches together and that pressurizes it, it's not going to leak in between the screw and the wood and allow that water through. So let me show you exactly what we're using to prevent this from happening in the future. So what we're using over the top of that glue lam beam is this waterproof membrane. This is really a great material. It's a heavy-duty plastic. It's self-adhesive, so you have to remove the backing. And when you remove the backing, you're going to expose this rubberized asphalt adhesive. Now, this is a real heavy coating that's on the back side of this. It's super sticky. So you might need two people to actually adhere this to whatever beam or joist you're putting it on top of. And what this does, when you put your screw in through this membrane, it's actually going to be self-sealing around that screw. So it's actually going to make a beautiful barrier so that water can no longer penetrate down that shaft. So there are several things that I really like about using this waterproof membrane versus using the metal flashing. First off, when you actually compare prices, they're about the same price. But the thing that you get with the waterproof membrane is that it's self-adhesive. You don't need to wear gloves because it doesn't have any sharp edges. And you don't really need any specialized tools because you could cut this with a pair of scissors or a utility knife. And you need to use tin snips to actually trim into that metal flashing. It's a lot harder to work with because you need to bend bend it. This is very moldable and malleable. So you can kind of see here, we've got one installed already. And the great thing about it is you could just take your utility knife, you could trim around every single joist, and you can actually move this over the edges of that structural beam and make sure that everything is nice and in place. So this product that I'm using is 12 inches wide, and this space is a little less than that, so it needs to be trimmed. And all I'm doing here, I'm just laying it in the space and I'm just making a crease over, so I'm just kind of marking it, and then I'll go ahead and take the utility knife and run the utility knife over that crease. So it's really easy to cut. Now I'll give it a good sweep before I glue it in place. Now I've cut this a little longer than it needs to be, and I'm going to go ahead and start peeling off the backing. One of the things is you can have somebody holding the other end for you nice and tight. I'm not exactly sure if it's completely necessary though, so I'm going to attempt this all by myself and see how well we can get this nicely laid out. So it's just going to kind of curl up to your siding just a little bit, maybe 1/4 of an inch there. And then I'm just going to take, pretty decent pressure with my hand and just run it over the top of this. And then I can continue to pull this up and pull the backing off as I go, making sure it's nice and aligned, and it's going to lay pretty evenly over the top of that surface. So now I can smooth this surface out with a gloved hand, or I could take a small roller like you'd use for decoupage, and you could just roll that out over the top of not only the beam but the joists on either side. So now I'm taking the utility knife and I'm trimming around each and every joist all the way up to that beam, and then I'm just going to take this waterproof membrane and just kind of wrap it around the edge of my structural beam, and everything will be nice and watertight. Well, the membrane looks perfect. It's down. It looks really great. I really wish that I could do each and every joist here, but you know what? That's quite an undertaking for a deck that's already built to have to pull everything off, treat it, and then put everything back on. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and take the few deck pieces that were pulled off, slide them in place, and then I'm going to take some coated, and they're actually the same color as the decking, coated deck screws. So you need to make sure that these are for outdoors so they're not going to rust again in the future, and I'll be good to go. So there you have it. The deck boards are nice and secure. It's like it never even happened. And you know what? This really is the right way to take care of building a brand new deck or taking care of existing problems with an older deck. The only thing that I really need to do at this point is take care of some moisture issues around the perimeter of the house. I'm going to get a little piece of flashing to put there so that I can further direct the water into that new roof that's going underneath the deck. And I won't have any problems with this in the future, and it'll probably last longer than I will at this point. This is Renee Romeo of reneeromeo.com. Thank you so much for watching this project, and if you enjoyed watching it or even have a question, please drop me a line below, and in the meantime, please like, share, subscribe, and follow, and then I can keep bringing you these great projects in the future. Thank you.